Not long ago, at a place not far from here, there was a little boy that was born, and he was living a pretty good life, growing. Every day he would go outside and he would always find new adventures. He had lots of friends all gathered around him, and every day he and his friends would play and they would seek adventure. And even when he went to school, he did very well. The teachers liked him, and he always enjoyed trying to learn, except for one little thing. He was never the absolute best. He wanted to be the best at something, at anything. He wasn't the best at eating candy because other people could eat more candy and they could eat faster than him. He wasn't the best at things like pizza eating and hot dog eating. He wasn't the best in getting grades because at times he would get an A and other students would end up getting an A plus. In fact, his best friend, Ronnie, got more A pluses than he ever did. So he was just never the best. And he tried everything. He tried running, he tried jumping, he tried tree climbing. He tried tree climbing. He climbed a big old oak tree that was at the end of his block. And he climbed and he climbed and he climbed. He was up more than 12 branches. He looked down and everybody down there was starting to look awfully tiny. Okay. And even the adults, even the grown folks looked really, really small. And he was 12 branches up. And then you know what happened? It was just terrible. He looked up and there was Mary Ann, the girl from up the street. She was 6 branches up higher than him at 18 branches. And so he thought, okay, I'm going to climb. I'm going to make this because I've got to climb higher than her so I can do it. And so he wanted to be the one that was the most outstanding. And he climbed over the first branch and climbed over the second. That was easy. But he was still 4 branches lower than the girl. He climbed another branch and all of a sudden it hit him. He looked down. And when he started looking down, the people looked even tinier than they had before. And so that was when he started to get nervous. And he reached up for the next branch and he grabbed hold. And when he grabbed hold, he had to really pull hard because his body wanted to go, but his mind didn't. So the body and the mind struggled trying to get up to that branch. And now he was only 2 branches lower than her. And he climbed, but then instead of looking down, this time he looked out and he could see out beyond his neighborhood. He could see above the houses. He could see the tops of other trees. And it was like a huge sea of green with little things sticking out of it. And that's where he decided, I'm too high. I've got to go back down. So he went back down. And even that day, he was not the best. And so he continued to live his life. He continued to try things. And eventually he went off to college. He went off to school. And even when he was in college, he continued to try to be the very best. And one day he ran into Professor McWaters. Now, Professor McWaters was a funny old guy. Okay, he was about 5'1", and he had really short hair. In fact, he almost had no hair, but it was like really, really short. And he had big bug eyes, and he talked really funny, like this when he talked. And everybody made fun of Professor McWaters. and including the kid that always wanted to be number one. So one day, the kid was trying to work on uh, his homework, and he ran into the professor, and the professor offered to help him. And so he went, and while they were working together, he said to the professor, "Why is it that you don't seem bothered? Everybody makes fun of you. They all talk about how funny you look and everything. Why is it that you don't get upset? Why is it that you don't feel bad about yourself? Why is it that you just keep teaching and keep doing what you do?" And he said, "Because I know the secret." And he's like, the guy thought to himself real quiet for a second, and he looked and he kept thinking, "The secret?" And the professor said, and he said it in his professor voice, like, "I know the secret." And the guy thought, "The secret? Okay." And he didn't want to ask the professor because he quite didn't believe him. He was like, "Look, if you know so many secrets, then why are you still the way you are?" So you could have been like different by now. You could be a big deal professor at a big deal university, and you could be really, really famous, and you could be all these things if you know the secret. So what's the secret? That's what he wanted to say. But instead, he didn't do anything. He just took the professor's help, worked on his work, and then went his happy way. But month after month passed, and he kept watching the professor. And so one day, he and the professor had a chance to work together again. And they were both alone, and he reminded the professor of the conversation they'd had. He said, "Professor, remember that conversation when we were talking about like why you are the way you are, and you talked about a secret?" And the professor was like, "Secret, secret, yes, secret, secret. I remember, yes, of course, the secret." And he said, "Okay, professor, what is the secret?" And he says, "Oh, the secret? Oh, young man, you really don't want to know the secret. You aren't interested." And he's like, "No, no, I'm interested. Just go ahead, tell me the secret, because I want to be the best. And I'm just never able to do it. And I would like to stand out. I would like to be number one at something." And the professor said, "Well, come here. Come here for a second. I will tell you the secret. The secret is to be number one at being yourself." And the guy felt so cheated. He felt so depressed. He thought to himself, "Man, see, I knew I should have asked because this is just dumb. Why would anyone want to be number one at being themselves if they weren't number one when they are themselves?" And he went away and he was upset and angry for several weeks. And every time he would see Professor McWaters, he would never want to go talk to him. He would never want to be near him. He would never do anything. Anyway, this went on for about 6, 7 weeks. And one day, Professor McWaters was sitting in the dining room cafeteria all by himself. And so this kid decided, well, I've been mad at this guy for so long. I need to go over to him and at least make peace, because even though he doesn't know that I'm mad, even though he doesn't know that I'm angry, and he doesn't know, and he doesn't care maybe, but I care. And so I want to tell him that I forgive him for like that lame story that he told me about being oneself. And he went over and he sat down at the table and he said to the professor, "Professor, I just want to tell you that I forgive you." And the professor looked at him quizzically and he said, "You forgive me for what?" And he said, "I forgive you because when I asked you for the secret, you ended up telling me that lame story." And he's like, "I know it couldn't be true because it didn't make any sense. You told me that I could be number one if I learned to be number one at being who I am." And he's like, "That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't get me to being number one. That gets me to being myself." And the professor said, "Yes, And the boy said, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. I want to be something else. And the professor said, well, young man, you don't make sense. How can you be more than you are? And the professor, the boy kind of like looked and he thought, how can I be more than I am? I could be more than I am because I can do, I can find, I can seek, and he says, and at every turn, you will always be what you are. And so the real secret is to be the best at being whatever it is you are when you are. Well, you know, it didn't really sink in then either in terms of what the story was going to be like in the end. But that boy went on, and one day, about 10 years later, okay, after he had graduated college, after he had a job, after he had a wife and some kids of his own, one day he was working and it hit him. It all hit him. It all came together. The professor's voice, whole conversations, all the anger and everything. And he realized that his whole life had been a life of excellence and beauty. He had friends. He had family. He had everything, intelligence. He had every gift that somebody could want. The only thing he didn't have was peace with being himself. And from that day forward to this, he became the man that can.